everybody. Welcome to my session here at SauceCon Virtual. I am incredibly excited to be performing or to be presenting today. My name is Jenny Bramble. Human interfacing is my absolute favorite thing, which is where this talk kind of came from. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm currently at Willow Tree Apps right now. Before we get much further, I want to make sure that everybody knows we've got a Slack channel on the SauceCon Slack. I'm going to be there after the talk. You can ask me tons of questions. And one thing that I would really love it if you would do is show me something from your house. One of the things that's incredible about these virtual conferences is that we really do get to be invited into each other's spaces. So I would love to see something special to you or something random, maybe your lunch, whatever. Just post it in Slack and let's start a conversation on it. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but primarily we're going to talk about play. I want to talk about what play is, why we do it, how we play, how we start playing as professional teams, and then have some time for questions if we've got it. Otherwise, like I said, I'll be on Slack. First, what is play? Now, play is often thought of as an activity that children do. Games, puzzles, recess, sports. It is incredibly serious to the players. If you have ever asked a small child about their princess game, it is incredibly serious. But when you step back, you're like, you're pretending to be a princess, y'all. That's literally mud in those cups. Please don't drink it. These activities seem kind of ridiculous and not serious at all. I'm talking dress up, role play, matching colored squares, doing paintings. When you look at them as individual activities, they can seem a little silly. And yet, play is an incredibly important part of our development as children and how we form lasting bonds. Children who are deprived of play score worse on many metrics, to the point that the lack of unstructured playtime concerns psychologists. And if you've got children, you see this in your kids. As they play, they start to develop skills that they need to survive, to thrive, to really be an adult in a successful sort of way. The role of development describes play as an activity that is desired, involves an imaginary situation, and always involves rules. Today, what I'm going to describe play as is a team activity that is fun, collaborative, and bonding. So we don't necessarily have to have an imaginary situation with rules to play, but we need something that's collaborative and objectively fun, and something that brings us together as a team. Keep this in mind for the rest of the talk as we go on. Let's talk about animals. You might know that cats are one of my favorite things. Animals play to learn skills. So you'll see that prey animals dodge and run and hide. Predators catch and claw and dive into things. And when my cats play, they often play fight. Dante, my older cat, you'll see him in this picture, always wins because that's a social hierarchy they have. Dax, the Siamese-looking one, plays a lot more often, but loses a lot of the games. In fact, he actually plays with more toys and a different variety of toys than Dante. Dante pretty much plays with that one thing. Dax will play with anything that you drop on the floor. Here's why this is important. Those who have the most to learn play the most. Dax is going to be 2 this week. Dante is 7? Oh my gosh. So Dax has a lot more to learn about his world still than Dante does. This is one of the reasons you see younger animals play more than older animals. They have more to learn. They're still investigating. They're still seeing how things work. And I think this holds true for humans as well. Children are strongly encouraged to play because they can experiment, learn about their world, how they fit into it, and what's really going on. Why did we stop? If it's so vital to our development and so interesting for our brains, why did we stop playing? I think we stopped formal playing because there comes a point where it doesn't serve our needs as well, and honestly, we need to do other things. One of my good friends recently had a daughter, and she's wonderful and amazing, but that's his life now. He doesn't really come out and play video games with us anymore because he's got his child, and she's wonderful. That's something that he needs to do that takes place. So instead of having recess, we have meetings. Instead of street hockey, we go out and grill. We have fun, we have potentially satisfying activities, but they aren't really the unstructured playtime that children have and that I'm going to be advocating for in this talk. But we do still play. I mean, we play video games, we play board games, sports, pranks on each other, puzzles, escape rooms. We still find ways to bring play and fun in, but we don't really prioritize it in our work day like I think we ought to. So why should we start playing again? Well, that's basically the rest of this talk, so if you're not bought into the premise, I'm sorry. I have 3 major points that I want to cover. Play helps those with the most to learn. Play creates and reinforces the social bonds we need to operate as a team, and play is incredible for your professional development. Let's start at the top. Play helps those with most to learn. And okay, so that might seem a little weird. You might be thinking, well, we're professional humans. We've been doing our job with teams for long enough to be good at it, right? What do we need to learn? I don't know if anyone's familiar with the storming, forming, norming, performing model of teamwork, so here's a graphic. Apologies for the low quality of this graphic. It was my favorite one of the ones that were offered. It essentially says when teams are first coming together, they are individuals who do not see themselves as part of a team. They are just random bucket of people. They haven't learned enough about each other to really be anything other than strangers forced together by circumstance. When they start to learn about each other, when they start to understand each other's motivations, they start to create their own team-based motivations. They become part of the team, and then they start to perform. And while they're learning about each other, that's the storming phase where you get a lot more contention. Play is a great way of short-circuiting a long storming and norming phase to bring people together faster. By playing, by doing things, we start to learn about each other and we start to say, oh, that's a person. These are the qualities that person has. This is something that I know about them, that they know about me, that we now have in common. You're going to create a stronger team. You're going to create a faster team. By giving people this framework to collaborate in a way that they can't fail, or they can fail, but there's no consequences for failure, you're creating a psychologically safe teamwork, psychologically safe framework for teamwork. I need to not put those 2 words together. You're creating a place where they can experiment, where they can fail, see how each other reacts to failure, and be okay with it. It makes the team more psychologically safe and more bonded. We learn about how each other works. We learn about ourselves. We learn about each other, and we start to see ourselves as more of a team. For example, one of my favorite games to play with my team is One Night Werewolf. And there is absolutely an online version of this. It's hilarious. Highly recommend. This is one of my favorite characters, the troublemaker. The idea of One Night Werewolf is that you've got 2 teams, the werewolves, and you've got the villagers, and the werewolves are trying to eat the villagers are trying to kill the werewolves. You know, a classic tale. In this game, you are assigned a role. My favorite role, like I said, is a troublemaker. So she wakes up, she looks at cards, and she knows kind of who some people are, potentially. This lets you have an artificial social structure. You're a werewolf, you're a villager, you're a seer, you're a troublemaker, and then explore social connections between people in this artificial hierarchy. So as a troublemaker, I'll be like, oh, I know who Eric is, and I'm going to see what happens when I kind of mess with him, when I say, oh yeah, Eric's totally a werewolf, when he's not actually a werewolf, see what happens. Because the game is a lot about convincing people that to be on your side or not on your side, you can work through a lot of really interesting team discussions without ever actually having those discussions. You have a safe space in this game. You have a hierarchy and a structure that's been created, and you have the tools to explore it. By exploring it, you have the tools to explore the other people in your team. How do they react to being confronted? How do they react to something that's maybe dishonest? How good are they at being dishonest? How do they think about things? This is an incredible thing to learn. And it leads right into my next point, which is that play creates and reinforces the social bonds we need to operate as a team. If you've ever tried to work on a team that doesn't talk to each other, it's not a team. There are social bonds that you need to be able to go up and say, hey, Alyssa, this is not working for me. This feature doesn't work. I don't understand. Can you help me? I can't go up to some random person and be like, hey, can you help me with this? Because there's no real social bond there. There's no reason for them to help me. As part of a team, I want them to have a reason to help me. I want them to like me in a lot of ways. This can also help us start creating team language. And honestly, this is an entirely different talk, and I'm going to try not to dive too deep in. But one of the most psychologically safe ways to start forming team bonds is to create a language and a history for the team. In-jokes, behavior that the team has that makes them feel like part of the unit. You know, secret code words, a treehouse, a secret handshake. Actions like this will create social structure and create a history for your team. Whenever you have someone new come onto the team, that history is passed down to them, and you say, oh yeah, whenever we're in stand-up, we do this hand motion to say that we need to move on, that we're talking too long. We do this hand motion that says, oh, I'm so excited, I'm really happy about this. And by teaching these traditions to newer team members, you bring them into the team faster. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later and try not to spend more than how long do I have? 30 minutes? Okay, we won't talk about it too much. The third thing is that play is great for your professional development. I'm a very technical person in a very technical role as a quality assurance person. As a tester, a large part of my career is based on learning and helping other people learn how systems work. A lot of those things that I need to learn and that I need to teach are like problem-solving skills, creating narratives, how to talk to people. And you can't really practice that in real life. Practicing talking to a client is really difficult to set up in a real sort of way. But games give you that structure. Games give you the ability to say, hey, we're creating a narrative. If you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons or any other kind of RPG, you create a character, and that character needs to act authentically throughout the entire game. And it may not be how you would act authentically, but it's how the character needs to act authentically. And learning how to create that narrative is really important and can do wonders for you whenever you're in a client meeting. And please feel free to let everybody know that you would like to DM the next client meeting, because that kind of works. And much like testing our social bonds, play can give us the opportunity to test our professional development, figure out what we know, and actually practice it. Okay, I hope y'all are on board with this idea of play as a bonding kind of experience. Please definitely put something in the Slack channel, drop it in chat, which I can't see right now, but drop it in the Slack channel. And if you've got any arguments, anything you'd like to say, I'd love to respond to it. Okay, how do we play? I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. I'm going to talk about two of them extensively, one of them a little bit, and then one of them super extensively. So agile ceremonies, wolf time, team outings, and learning. First, I have a question for y'all. I can't really take questions right now, but I want you to drop it in Slack. How do you end your stand-ups? Whenever you're done with your stand-up, what happens? Do you clap? Do you cheer? Do you do something else? Do you just sort of wander off? I asked this question at work, and this is what I got. All of these answers, this isn't even all the answers I got. I just picked my favorite ones out. I'm not going to read all of these. There's tons of them. All of them are a type of play. I described play earlier. It's fun, collaborative, bonding. Each one of these fit this definition. On top of that, some of them are a little bit silly. There's chants, throwing of stuffed animals, synchronized clapping. There's the panda snap, which I'm not even sure what that is, but I kind of want a demo. One of my buddies said, I want to end stand-up with a rose ceremony like on The Bachelor. I don't know how that would work, but I am incredibly committed to making it work. And as the discussion progressed, my coworkers started retelling the oral histories of their team. Who came up with the idea to do the word of the day? How many teams did they spread it to? You could track people's movement through the company by which teams had which stand-up ceremonies. These bond the teams. It bonds the teams to each other, and then it bonds us as a company in the whole. Having a team tradition for ending your ceremonies is play. It's absolutely play. I was on a team that did a clap to end stand up, and then to end retro, we did a reverse clap, which is where you press your hands hard together and then you swoosh them apart, and that's a reverse clap. It was ridiculous, amazing, and I can see 3 other teams doing it right now. So I know that spread to them through us, and it makes us bond. My team started it, so we're kind of the grand team of it. It's very cool. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is wolf time. Dad joke ahead, y'all. Sorry. Not sorry. Let's talk about flow first. Flow, or being in the zone, is that mental state where you're performing an activity and you're just so into it. You're energized, you're focused, you're full involvement. Like if this was a pool, you were down at the bottom of the deep end, just soaking in that water. It is when you get the most work done, you feel like you could go on forever. It is the optimal state for working. It is incredibly important for anyone that wants to operate at highest efficiency. Wolf time is the opposite of flow time. You see it's like reversed. It's wolf and flow. I can hear y'all groaning from here. Thank you. I'm not taking credit for this. It's a concept that came up at work, but I can't stand it. I love it so much. During wolf time, the idea is to do something collaborative and fun with your team, to play. Something that's not work, but something that helps build bonds. It's become important enough that we actually talk about it when our teams are first forming and plan it into our ceremonies. So what's that look like? It's semi-structured, it's regular, once a sprint usually, sometimes once a week, limited to about an hour, and often has one person in charge. So one person is the DRI, or the directly responsible individual, making sure that it's planned, that it's happening, that no one is upset. Pretty cool. So I asked again, hey y'all, what do y'all do for wolf time? I also got a million answers and didn't want to put all of them on here because I really like this picture of the cat. One of my team members hadn't seen Alien, so we actually sat down and watched the movie Alien in a giant conference room on the biggest TV we had in the office while we ate lunch. We did this over like 2 sessions. It was so great. Went on a scavenger hunt in the office, built Lego structures, played giant Jenga, which I found out is extremely stressful for some people. So be careful with your giant Jengas. And one team made gingerbread houses, and then the rest of the company ate their gingerbread houses. So that was really fun. I'm going to talk about this just really briefly because I want to get to some of the other stuff in my presentation. This is a wolf time I was really proud of. My team was in crunch time, having a really rough go of it. Morale was down, stress was up, and I said, let me run some wolf time. You might be thinking, wait, wolf time while crunch time? Does that work? Actually, it really does, because taking that hour and a half or so to kind of de-stress, detoxed us, and made us a lot happier afterwards. So I took about 12 canvases and I drew our company's logo on top of it in pencil. And I said, okay, y'all, you can paint this any color you want, any way you want, but you have to stay within the lines. We had so much fun. Even the people that weren't actively painting were sitting there acting like art critics. Like, dude, art critics. It was amazing. We were so much calmer. We felt so much better. We actually put this up in our team space and have had several teams come over and be like, wow, what's that? It's so cool. For bonus points, drop in Slack which panel you think I made and which panel you think our designer made. And I will tell you the answer at some point. The other thing I want to talk about, team outings and happy hours. Again, you're looking at something semi-structured, somewhere people can form bonds. A lot of companies already do this, but they treat it like a perk instead of an integral part of the team and the company's overall health. And I think that's really important because we need these connections. We need these ways to be able to interact with each other so that we can be better teams. I'm going to say that larger like company events aren't as important as team-focused events, but they're still incredibly valuable. Here again, we've got some stuff. We've done scavenger hunts, social games, escape rooms. Our test team did an escape room and had the best time, almost, of anyone. We were 10 seconds off, and we would have been the best, except someone dropped some of the keys, and we had to go find them. So again, an oral history of the team. Finally, learning through play. This is something I am incredibly passionate about, and I feel like learning play is one of the best gateways to generalize playtime in Agile teams. I run office hours, which is a time for the test engineers to come together and do testing things. Sometimes a talk, a discussion, a workshop, and sometimes we play games. I have a list of, I think, 24 games with one big thing in common. They teach you something about software development, critical thinking, testing, or agile methodology. Let me give you an example. This is TestSphere. TestSphere is a set of cards that has something to do with different aspects of testing. Feelings, heuristics, quality aspects, techniques, and patterns. Each card gives you a definition and example. I created an expansion for TestSphere called TestSphere Arena that takes it from a set of informational cards to an Uno-like game where you can play like the same color cards on each other. So you can play feeling on feeling, or you have to tell a story on how the card relates. I can play the feeling anger on the technique of regression testing if I can connect that with a story. If I can tell a story about how doing regression testing made me angry once or not doing it made me angry. This makes it really interesting because you start to be able to form a narrative and you start to know how other people think, what experiences they've had, what sorts of things they've done. And of course, it also has draw twos, draw fours, skips, reverses, and wilds, just like Uno. So you learn who in your team is going to play several draw fours on you every time their turn comes. Yeah, that happened to me. Could you tell? What we get here is, again, a lot of information about how our coworkers think in their experiences. We start to tell stories. We learn how to tell stories. We don't necessarily have to tell a real story. We could tell a fake story. That's cool. We just have to make something come together and make something interesting. You're going to find games like this, and this one in particular for testers, will really let you learn a lot about your environment, your team members, how you want them to think, and the things that they're good at. It's a fun game. It is incredibly fun and incredibly practical. I have a list of like 20 games like that, y'all, and I will absolutely include these as resources, and I'll put a lot of links in the chat after this so you can see everything. Almost every problem you're facing has a game. Almost every team can improve something, and there's a game for it. So how do you start playing? Like, okay, you're bought in. You think this is amazing. You think games are fantastic. How do you do? I want to start by talking about the zone of proximal development. There are 3 zones here. What you know and you're super good at, you just do it, no problem. The zone in the middle are things that you're not good at, but if someone coaches you, you can do that. So like think about when you're starting painting and someone's like, hey, we're going to paint hands now. Here, let me show you how to do that. And then beyond that is what is not known, something you can't do even if someone's there holding your hand. It's just too difficult for you, and it's not fun difficult, it's bad difficult. When you're introducing new concepts, remember these 3 zones, and remember that you need to be careful not to ask too much too quickly. If your team isn't psychologically safe enough to play, or if they're very in tune with the individual and not the team, it can be hard to say, okay, we're gonna go play Hearts for like an hour. If you ever play Hearts, Hearts is great. Hearts is not great. Resistance can undermine what you're trying to accomplish in the end. So my biggest piece of advice about this is to start small. I suggest figuring out how you enter stand-ups. I just started on a new team, and I was like, hey, y'all, how are we going to end our stand-ups? And everyone's like, oh, come on. I literally am giving a talk about this today. You have to give me something. So we decided what we're going to do is we're going to do like a little hand wave. And our project, whoever owns the meeting is going to click the end meeting for all. It's super cute. It's a little ridiculous, but it's accessible to everybody on the team. Everybody can wave, and that's fine. Some other things like the 1, 2, 3, clap. That's super fun. Especially as we're all remote now, we need something to kind of make us feel a little more connected. So what I recommend is start small. Start with, how are you going to end stand up? If you want to get somebody's attention in chat or in a Zoom call, how are you going to do that? Are you going to wave your hand? Are you going to do like focus box? Something that is a little physical, a little interesting, a little outside of the norm, outside of just doing. And once you've got that in place, once it's been happening for a little bit, evaluate how your team reacts. Are there a couple people that just don't do it? Are there people that really are totally bought into it? Can you use those people as leverage to get more things happening? And then start thinking about what's beneficial next. If the team seems to be accepting of your goofy little stand-up ending, great. Start talking about wolf time. And like I said, I know a lot of us are remote right now. This could be watching a webinar online. Those are fantastic. You can watch my webinar from last SauceCon. You could also play cards online. You can do Jackbox games. Sometimes it's super fun to just open up a Zoom and put a whiteboard up and just be like, okay, let's draw on the whiteboard and see what happens. Anything that kind of takes people's minds off their job for a little bit and lets them immerse themselves in something else is going to be incredibly valuable. One thing I would caution about is doing too much video-based. I'm seeing a lot of Zoom fatigue or video fatigue. Just being on camera for so long can be really exhausting. So maybe you do something like, one of my last teams, we did a teach me anything. So you had 5 minutes and you could teach the team whatever. One person showed us how to do like a little cutout stamp. Someone else showed us how to fold a fitted sheet. It was incredible, mind blown. We actually had a lot of time left over, so I took like 30 minutes and showed everybody how to make soap. Like, we made soap on a Zoom call and everyone was fascinated. It was so cool. Doing a learning activity around like the agile methodology is also a great way to kind of slide into it. So you're like, oh, it's not playtime, it's learning, we're learning. And like I said, I have a ton of games like this, and there's a lot that can be done online as well. If this is something that interests you, ping me and we can talk through what an online version of some of these games would look like. Okay, gonna recap here. Play is a team bonding and building activity. Creatures who need to learn the most play the most. And when teams are starting out, that's us. Start small and work up to bigger games. Work up to things that are a little bit more gamey. And any play is healthy. Anything you can get into your teams, if it's stand up, if it's weird things that you say in chat, if it's starting an oral history, getting some in-jokes together, all of that is really, really healthy and really good for your team. Okay, you can absolutely find me online. Here's some information. But what I'm going to recommend most off is that you go ahead and join the SauceCon Slack, grab that wonderful channel that I've made, post me something, post your scavenger hunt picture, and let's continue the conversation. Thank you.